Nothing hurts. Nothing is broken. So why does everything suddenly feel harder? It's 4:17 a.m. The house is quiet. Too quiet. At this age, being awake before sunrise isn't unusual. What's unusual is the feeling that comes with it. You're not sick. You didn't wake up in pain. You didn't have a nightmare. And yet, lying there in the dark, something feels off. You sit up slowly. Not because you're injured, because you've learned not to move too fast anymore. This is how it starts for most people over 70. Not with a diagnosis, not with an ambulance, but with a quiet moment where you realize life now requires more effort than it used to. You still walk. You still drive. You still live on your own. From the outside, everything looks fine, but inside, there's a growing question you don't say out loud. Why am I so tired when I didn't do anything wrong? Doctors call this normal aging. Friends say, well, that's just part of getting older. But deep down, that answer doesn't sit right. Because you remember a time when aging didn't feel like this, when mornings didn't begin with hesitation, when standing up didn't require planning. Today, sit here with me for a moment. Hold a warm cup of tea in your hands. And listen closely. Because sometimes the habits we believe are keeping us healthy are quietly wearing our bodies down instead. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's story is their own. But once you're past 65, we both know this. Your health matters more than old rules, more than pushing through pain, more than trying to live the way you did decades ago. If this moment resonates with you, go ahead and tap the like button. Think of it as adding a little more warmth to my cup of tea. And if you'd like to sit down with me again, have more of these quiet conversations about aging and health, subscribe to the channel. Now, let's continue the story. Here's the part nobody likes to admit. Most people over 70 aren't afraid of dying. They're afraid of living wrong, afraid they're eating the wrong foods, sleeping the wrong way, moving too little, moving too much. Afraid that one small mistake will take away their independence. So they try harder. They push themselves. They force routines that no longer fit. They follow rules written for bodies they no longer have. And when it doesn't work, they blame themselves. But what if the problem isn't effort? What if it isn't discipline? What if it isn't motivation? What if the rules quietly changed and no one told you? Research published by major aging and health institutions in the United States shows something uncomfortable but consistent. After 70, the human body does not decline in one dramatic collapse. It changes system by system, silently, predictably, and almost universally. Not because you failed, not because you were careless, but because biology has its own timeline. This is why so many older Americans wake up one morning and feel lost in their own bodies. They're still doing what worked at 60, at 50, sometimes even at 40, and they can't understand why it suddenly feels wrong. That confusion is dangerous, not physically at first, mentally. Because confusion turns into fear. Fear turns into tension, and tension accelerates decline faster than age ever could. Here's the truth most people don't hear early enough. After 70, your body doesn't respond to force. It responds to understanding. There are 5 major changes that happen to almost everyone at this stage of life. They don't arrive all at once. They don't announce themselves. But together they decide whether the next 20 years are lived with confidence or caution. And once you see them clearly, something shifts. The guilt fades, the self-blame stops, and the fog finally lifts. Because what's happening to you isn't a personal failure. It's a transition. And the first place most people notice that transition and misunderstand it completely is sleep. Sleep. That's where most people notice it first. Not during the day, not at the doctor's office, but alone in the middle of the night. You go to bed earlier now, not because you want to, but because your body insists. By 7, maybe 8, your eyelids feel heavy. Friends are still watching TV. The neighborhood lights are still on. And there you are, turning off the lamp, feeling oddly embarrassed. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet thought creeps in. What kind of adult goes to bed this early? Then comes the next part. You wake up. Midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., wide awake, not anxious. not panicked, just awake. This is the moment people don't talk about, the moment that makes them feel strange, broken, out of sync with the rest of the world. You lie there staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence, wondering why sleep has become something you can't control anymore. Many older Americans think this means something is wrong with them. They think they've developed insomnia. They think they've failed at sleep. They think they need to fix it, so they try. They force themselves to stay up later. They drink coffee to push through the evening. They tell themselves normal people go to bed at 10. Let me tell you about Tom. Tom is 74, lives down the street, retired electrician, sharp guy, independent, proud of the fact that he's never needed much sleep. When Tom started waking up at 3 a.m, he decided he wasn't going to let it happen. He read articles online. He watched late-night TV until his eyes burned. He told himself that if he could just stay awake long enough, his sleep would reset. It didn't. Instead, he spent hours lying in bed, frustrated, tense, angry at his own body. Within weeks, he was exhausted during the day. His balance felt off. His patience ran thin. And the nights got worse, not better. What Tom didn't know, and what millions of people over 70 don't know, is this. After a certain age, your brain changes the schedule. Not your willpower, not your discipline. Your brain. The internal clock that once synced perfectly with society starts moving earlier. Melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep, is released sooner. Deep sleep becomes shorter and lighter. Your body is no longer designed for 8 uninterrupted hours. This isn't a flaw. It's a redesign. But society doesn't adjust with you. The world still runs on late dinners, late shows, late nights. And suddenly, your natural rhythm makes you feel out of place. Like you don't belong in your own life anymore. That's where the shame comes from. People don't say it out loud, but they feel it. They feel childish for sleeping early, weak for waking up too soon, old in a way they never felt before. So they fight their own biology. And that fight is exhausting. Large sleep studies published in the US have consistently shown that after 70, the brain produces significantly less deep restorative sleep, the kind that repairs muscles, stabilizes mood, and sharpens thinking. Forcing yourself to stay awake doesn't bring that sleep back. It just creates stress, and stress destroys whatever quality sleep you still have. This is why so many older adults say, "I'm tired all day, but I can't sleep at night." It's not insomnia in the way people think. It's a mismatch. Your body is on one schedule. Society is on another. When you try to live on the old schedule, the one that worked at 50, you pay for it with fatigue, irritability, brain fog, and sometimes depression, not because you're weak, but because you're ignoring the signals your body is sending. The turning point for Tom didn't come from a pill. It came from letting go. He stopped forcing himself to stay up. He went to bed when he felt tired. If he woke up at 3, he stopped panicking. Sometimes he read. Sometimes he sat quietly. Sometimes he slept in 2 parts. Within weeks, something changed. He wasn't sleeping longer, but he was sleeping better, more calm, less angry, more rested than he'd been in months. Here's the truth that frees a lot of people when they finally hear it. Sleep after 70 doesn't disappear. It transforms. The mistake is judging it by younger standards. Straight, uninterrupted sleep is no longer the goal. Rest is. When you stop fighting your body's new rhythm, you conserve energy. And that energy matters. Because sleep isn't just about nights anymore. It affects how steady you feel on your feet, how clearly you think, how much strength you have during the day. And when sleep is misunderstood, the consequences show up somewhere else. Not at night, but in the morning when you stand up. By the time sleep starts to feel unfamiliar, something else is already changing quietly in the background. This is the second of the 5 changes that happen to most people after 70. And it's one of the most dangerous, because you often don't feel it happening. Your body's sense of temperature begins to lie to you, not all at once, not dramatically, but just enough to put you at risk. Here's what surprises people. After 70, many adults no longer feel thirst the way they used to. They don't feel cold the way they used to, and they don't feel heat clearly either. The warning signals that once shouted now whisper or disappear entirely. That's why so many people say, I didn't realize how hot it was. I didn't feel that cold. I wasn't even thirsty. Let me give you a situation that happens every day across America. It's a mild afternoon, not extreme, not dangerous, on paper. You step into the garage to organize a few boxes. Maybe you mow part of the lawn. Maybe you go down into the basement to grab something. Minutes turn into an hour. The body used to tell you when to stop. Now it doesn't. You're not sweating much. You're not shivering. You feel fine. That's the problem. Medical research published in major U.S. journals has shown that after 70, the brain areas responsible for temperature regulation lose sensitivity. Sweat glands become less efficient. Blood vessels don't respond as quickly. The internal thermostat that once protected you no longer adjusts the way it should. So heat builds without warning. Cold creeps in without resistance. This is why emergency rooms see a sharp rise in heat-related and cold-related incidents among older adults, even on days that don't seem extreme. And here's the scariest part. People often don't realize they're in trouble until they're already in it. A neighbor of mine, Eleanor, 76, learned this the hard way. One winter afternoon, she spent time in her basement doing laundry. It felt cool, but comfortable. She didn't put on a sweater. She didn't feel cold. By evening, she felt confused, sluggish. Her hands were shaking slightly. She thought she was just tired. She wasn't. Her body temperature had dropped to a dangerous level without triggering the normal alarm bells. No strong shivering, no intense discomfort, just quiet failure of the system that used to protect her. This is what people mean when they say aging sneaks up on you. It doesn't attack, it misleads. After 70, you can't rely on how you feel to tell you what's safe. Feeling okay is no longer a guarantee. That's why adaptation becomes critical. Older adults who remain independent the longest tend to do something simple but powerful. They stop trusting sensation alone. They start living by awareness. They check the thermostat instead of guessing. They drink water by habit, not thirst. They dress in layers, not instinct. They limit time in garages, basements, and outdoor heat, even when they feel fine. This isn't fear, it's wisdom. Because after 70, your body doesn't always tell the truth in real time. But your mind can step in and compensate if you understand what's changed, and once you accept that, something shifts again. You stop blaming yourself for not feeling right. You stop pushing past invisible limits. You start protecting yourself before damage occurs. This second change teaches a hard lesson. After 70, you don't live by sensation anymore. You live by intention. And that awareness, when applied consistently, does more than keep you safe from heat or cold. It preserves energy. Energy that becomes essential for the next system that begins to fail quietly long before most people notice. By the time you stop trusting your body's signals for heat and cold, another change has already settled in. Quietly, politely, and often misunderstood. This is the third of the 5 changes that happen to most people after 70. It shows up at the table, a family dinner, a holiday gathering, a potluck at church. The food is familiar. The people are warm. Laughter fills the room. Plates are passed around. Portions are generous. And then someone notices. You're eating less. Not skipping the meal, not refusing food, just less. And immediately the assumptions start forming. Are you on a diet? You barely touched your plate. Are you feeling okay? You smile. You reassure them. But inside there's a pinch of embarrassment. A quiet worry that you don't say out loud. What if they think I'm fading? Eating has always been more than fuel in American life. It's connection, celebration, belonging. And when your plate looks different from everyone else's, especially the younger people, you feel it. You feel slower, smaller, out of step. What most people don't realize is that after 70, the digestive system changes its pace. Not suddenly, not painfully, but decisively. Food takes longer to move. The stomach empties more slowly. The body works harder to break things down. So when you eat the way you used to, large portions, late dinners, heavy meals, the result isn't pleasure anymore. It's fullness that lingers too long, fatigue that arrives too fast, a heaviness that makes you want to sit down instead of join the conversation. Many older adults mistake this for weakness. They think, I'm losing my appetite. They think, I'm not as strong as I used to be. They think something is wrong with them. Nothing is wrong. The rhythm changed. Medical research in the US has long documented that digestion slows with age. Enzyme production decreases. Muscle movement in the digestive tract becomes less coordinated. Nutrients are absorbed more slowly. None of this is dramatic, but all of it adds up. And because no one explains this clearly, people internalize it. They start apologizing for eating less. They feel like they're inconveniencing others. They worry they're bringing the mood down. That emotional weight is heavier than the meal itself. Here's what doesn't help. Talking about dieting. Talking about cutting foods. Talking about rules. That conversation misses the point entirely. This isn't about restriction, it's about respect for a body that now operates on a different schedule. When older adults eat smaller amounts more slowly and with more attention, they often feel better, not worse, more present, more energetic, more able to enjoy the people around them. Eating less doesn't mean you care less about life. It means you've learned how to stay in it. The people who thrive the longest don't fight this change. They adapt quietly. They stop measuring themselves against younger appetites. They stop forcing meals to look the way they used to. And when they do, something interesting happens. The shame fades. The discomfort eases. The joy returns, without the exhaustion. This third change teaches a gentle but powerful lesson. After 70, listening to your body doesn't mean indulging every craving. It means recognizing when enough is enough and honoring that signal without guilt. Because eating less isn't a step backward. It's a step towards sustaining the energy you'll need for what comes next. And what comes next doesn't happen at the table. It happens when you stand up. After the meal ends, after the conversation fades, after you push your chair back from the table, this is when it often shows itself. This is the fourth of the 5 changes that happen to most people after 70. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't arrive with pain. It arrives with a moment so small you almost laugh it off. A slight slip on the rug. A brief wave of dizziness when you stand up. A hand reaching for the wall, just in case. You tell yourself it was nothing, and that's exactly why it's dangerous. Most falls don't begin with a fall. They begin with hesitation, with uncertainty, with the subtle realization that your body didn't respond the way you expected it to. You've walked these floors for decades. You know every step on that staircase. You've stepped over that rug 1,000 times. So when your foot doesn't land exactly where you thought it would, it shakes something deeper than balance. It shakes trust. At first, the fear is quiet. You don't say it out loud, you don't want to sound dramatic, but it's there, sitting in the background. What if next time I don't catch myself? And once fear enters the picture, the body changes again. Muscles tighten, movements become cautious, steps shorten. Ironically, this tension makes balance worse. Medical studies from U.S. geriatric research centers have shown that fear of falling increases fall risk significantly. When the body is tense, it can't make the small, automatic adjustments that keep you upright. Balance depends on fluid motion, and fear disrupts that flow. This is why people who almost fell start falling more. Not because they're clumsy, because they're afraid. The environment doesn't help. American homes are full of hidden challenges once balance begins to fade. Soft rugs that slide just enough, staircases with shadows where depth perception falters, hallways lit warmly, but not brightly enough. None of these things are new. What's new is how your body processes them. After 70, the systems that once worked together effortlessly begin to drift apart. The inner ear sends slower signals. The eyes struggle more with contrast. The brain takes longer to integrate information and respond. So when something unexpected happens, an uneven step, a sudden turn, the correction comes too late. That's why falls aren't accidents in the way people think. They're the result of accumulation, small changes, ignored signals, adaptations that didn't quite keep up. And when a fall finally happens, it feels shocking. Not because it was sudden, but because you didn't see it coming. People often say, I don't know what happened. I just went down. That confusion is part of the pattern. Balance doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes quietly. One near miss teaches the body to brace. Bracing teaches the body to stiffen. Stiffness makes recovery harder. And the cycle continues. The people who maintain independence longest are not the ones who deny this change. They're the ones who acknowledge it early, before fear takes control. They remove the rugs. They improve the lighting. They slow down without apologizing for it. They don't see these adjustments as surrender. They see them as strategy. Because balance after 70 isn't about strength alone. It's about awareness, preparation, and respect for what's changed. When people understand that falling isn't random, something important shifts. They stop blaming themselves. They stop calling it bad luck. They start paying attention. This fourth change teaches one of the hardest lessons of aging. You don't lose balance in a day. You lose it in silence. And if you listen closely enough, your body tells you long before the fall ever happens. The question is whether you'll hear it in time, because the final change, the last of the five, is the one that determines how much control you keep when everything else begins to slow down. This is the fifth change, the last one, and the one that decides everything else. You don't see it in the mirror right away. You don't feel it all at once, and that's what makes it so dangerous. Muscle loss doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly in ordinary moments. When getting out of a chair takes a second longer than it used to, when you hesitate before the stairs, when your legs feel heavy for no clear reason, when fatigue arrives after tasks that once felt effortless. You tell yourself you're just tired. You tell yourself you didn't sleep well. You tell yourself it's normal. But underneath those explanations, something fundamental is changing. After 70, the body begins to lose muscle at a rate most people don't expect. Not slowly, not gently, but steadily, year after year. And unlike weight or appetite, muscle loss doesn't correct itself. Once it's gone, it doesn't simply come back. This is the part that shocks people when they finally learn it. A minor illness, a short hospital stay, a week or two of staying in bed, and suddenly, everything feels different. Your legs don't trust you the same way. Your arms feel weaker. Your balance, already fragile, becomes uncertain. Medical research from leading U.S. institutions has shown that older adults can lose years' worth of muscle strength in a matter of days during inactivity, and recovering that muscle after 70 is slow, sometimes incomplete. That's why people say things like, "I was fine before I got sick. I never bounced back." They're not imagining it. Muscle is not just about strength. It's about choice, the ability to stand up without thinking, the ability to climb stairs instead of avoiding them, the ability to carry groceries, open doors, live without asking for help. When muscle declines, options disappear. And here's the emotional truth people rarely talk about. Loss of muscle feels like loss of dignity, not because others judge you, but because you feel it yourself. You notice when you start planning your movements, when you avoid certain chairs, when you scan rooms for handholds. Independence doesn't vanish in a single moment. It narrows, one choice at a time. The hardest realization comes quietly. It's not the pain that scares people most. It's dependence, needing help to stand, needing help to walk, needing help to live the life you built. This is where everything connects back to that first question. Nothing hurts. Nothing is broken. So why does everything feel harder? Because muscle is the engine behind everything else. Sleep supports muscle. Temperature regulation protects muscle. Nutrition fuels muscle. Balance depends on muscle. When muscle goes, the system collapses inward. And yet, this is where the story turns. Because muscle is also the one area where understanding changes outcomes dramatically. The people who maintain muscle don't do it by force. They don't punish their bodies. They don't chase youth. They protect function. They prioritize protein without guilt. They move with intention instead of intensity. They rest without shame. They understand that muscle after 70 requires respect, not aggression, and when they do that, something remarkable happens. They keep their choices. They decide when to sit, when to stand, when to leave the house, when to live on their terms. This is why the final truth matters more than any other in this story. Muscle is not about appearance. It's not about strength competitions. It's about freedom. freedom to live independently, freedom to say yes, freedom to remain yourself. So when people ask what matters most after 70, the answer isn't complicated. It isn't fear. It isn't denial. It isn't fighting time. It's understanding what holds your independence together. And that understanding leads to one simple truth. Independence is stored in your muscles. So let me ask you this. Which of these changes did you recognize yourself in? Leave a comment below and be honest with yourself. I read every single one. They make the cup of tea I'm sipping feel a little warmer, a little sweeter. And if this video helped you understand your body and your independence a little better, subscribe. Because next time, I'll be sharing something important. If you're between 65 and 80 and you still have these things in your life, you're not just surviving, you're winning at life. You won't want to miss that. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourself.